but there is only one herb that works specifically above and beyond a general relaxant for stiff-necked, overachieving list makers who have a hard time asking for help. And that's blue vervain.
Hello and welcome to the Herbs with Rosalee podcast, a show exploring how herbs heal as medicine, as food, and through nature connection. I'm your host, Rosalee de la Forêt. I created this YouTube channel to share trusted herbal wisdom so that you can get the best results when relying on herbs for your health. I love offering up practical knowledge to help you dive deeper into the world of medicinal plants and seasonal living. Each episode of the Herbs with Rosalee podcast is shared on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast app. Transcripts and recipes for each episode can be found at herbswithrosaleepodcast.com or through the link in the video description. Also in the video description, you'll find other helpful resources. For example, to get my best herbal tips, as well as fun bonuses, be sure to sign up for my weekly herbal newsletter. Okay, grab your cup of tea and let's dive in. First up is the Herbs with Rosalee Student Spotlight. Each week we take a moment to celebrate one of our amazing students and their inspiring contributions to our herbal community. This week we're shining the spotlight on Dawn from Washington. Since joining Cooling Inflammation just over a year ago, Dawn has become a vibrant and engaged member of our community. She also jumped into the Herbal Energetics course last fall and began our Rooted Medicine Circle course earlier this year and is pursuing the certificate path in both of them. And her work has been truly outstanding. Her Herbal Energetics reviews are thoughtful and deeply personal, showing this beautiful arc of growth, while her Rooted Medicine Circle reflections are rich with detail and reverence for the plants and the natural world. She's also a bright presence at our live events where she regularly shows up with curiosity and enthusiasm, asking questions that spark meaningful conversation and connection. And most recently, Dawn joined our newest offering, the Podcast Circle, another sign of her deep commitment to herbal learning and community. To honor her contributions, Mountain Rose Herbs is sending Dawn a $50 gift certificate to stock up on their incredible selection of sustainably sourced herbal supplies. Mountain Rose Herbs is my go-to for high-quality organic spices, herbal remedies, and even hard-to-find botanicals. They ship all over the U.S. and have a massive selection of products to fuel your herbal adventures. Thank you, Mountain Rose Herbs, for supporting our amazing students. If you'd like to explore Mountain Rose Herbs offerings and support this show, you can find the special link in the show notes. Hey friends, it's Rosalee. If you've been nourished by this podcast, if it's helped you feel more connected to the plants or more grounded in your own herbal path, then I'd love to invite you to join the Herbs with Rosalee podcast circle. This special membership helps make the podcast possible. It supports everything we do behind the scenes, and it gives you a chance to go even deeper with the content that you love. Inside the circle, you'll get exclusive herbal resources, live classes each season with some of my favorite herbal teachers, and a private space to connect with fellow plant lovers. It's where the heart of our herbal community continues to grow. To learn more and join us, visit herbalpodcastcircle.com. Your support means the world, and it helps this podcast continue to bloom. It was such a joy to have my good friend Thomas on the show. Not only did we have a lot of fun recording this episode, but Thomas also shared some truly fascinating insights about blue vervain, especially ways to work with it for sweating and fevers that were completely new to me. If you've ever worked with this plant, or even if you haven't, I think you'll come away with a fresh perspective. Thomas has one of the most brilliant and curious minds that I know, and every time we talk, I learn something new. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. For those of you who don't already know him, Thomas Easley is a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild, a clinical herbalist, and the founder of the Eclectic School of Herbal Medicine. With a passion for herbal medicine ignited in 1996, Thomas has dedicated his life to helping others through unique approaches that integrate traditional Western herbalism, clinical nutrition, and modern medical sciences. Thomas is the co-author of the Modern Herbal Dispensatory, a medicine-making guide, and modern herbal medicine. He firmly believes in the power of herbal medicine to transform lives and promote vibrant health. His approach emphasizes the importance of food as medicine and incorporates tailored diets, stress reduction techniques, nutritional supplements, and exercise to help clients achieve their health goals. Welcome to the show, Thomas.
Hi, Rosalee. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah. Well, part of me wants to say, like, welcome back to the show, but this is your first time. And I would just like to start this conversation by giving you a hard time, which is how I like to welcome all my guests. Um, so here's my experience, Thomas. I'd be like mentioning you because I like to name drop you from time to time. And I'd be like, my friend Thomas. Yeah, Thomas Easley. And people would be like, oh, is he a friend of yours? And I'd be like, oh, yeah, like we're like legit friends. And they'd be like, oh, I want to listen to his episode on your podcast. I'd be like, yeah, about that. He hasn't been on the podcast yet. And then they'd be like, oh, you're friends. But yes, we're like legit friends. Like I text him and he texts me back within 5 minutes. Like we're that kind of friends. And
Mhm.
they're like, and they look at me with pity, like that
Oh
I'm
no.
deceiving myself. Yeah, it's been rough. It's been rough because, we've been doing this 4 years now. And it's not for my lack of asking that you haven't been on before, Thomas, just to point
Yeah.
that out.
Yeah, no, that's true. Like, I mean, so number one, time isn't real. And
Okay.
4 years,
4 years. Yeah.
that's wow. So 2021, I mean, it's been a 4 years, Rosalie. Like everybody has been really busy.
Hmm.
But 2021, I took like a year off of teaching to try to recover from depression, and I spent the year like woodworking, building things with my hands, and binge reading philosophy books while mentally preparing for a book that I wanted to write, and then that just like took a lot longer than I would thought. So I said no to like everybody for several years about everything.
But
Sorry
you're doing
about
a
that.
great job. You're doing a great job of getting off the hook here. I like that you said to everybody about everything. So it's not like
I,
it wasn't
I
just
mean,
me.
yeah, no, like I just said no to everybody. Stopped teaching at conferences and doing like anything extra because I needed my energy for my own recovery and
Hmm.
for the limited energy is like a sucky thing and you have to prioritize, and I yeah, I have regrets about withdrawing for a few years, but also it was needed, and I feel like that your listeners might understand that.
I guess they will. I do as well. In fact, that's actually one of the conversations we've had a lot about conserving energy, from kind of one type A to another.
Mhm.
We've talked about that a lot actually, and it's something I've appreciated from you of just both the struggle and seeing your success in it as well. So I can appreciate that. I'm glad that you're here now, Thomas.
So who have your favorite guests been in the last 4 years?
Oh, I'm the interviewer is how these work, I
Oh,
guess.
sorry.
Well, I will say, Jim
Mhm.
McDonald, um, mutual friend of ours, other legit friend. Of course, having him on is always fun.
Right.
And yeah, and Robin Rose Bennett has been a lot of fun. She's been on several times as well. Yeah.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
one of my favorite people is Jesus Garcia. I don't know if you know Jesus. He's from
Mm-mm.
lives in Texas, and he was kind of like this unexpected jewel who's become a friend. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, there's so many. Like there hasn't been a bad interview because I interview amazing herbalists. So every single person has just been this kind of journey. It's been really fun.
That's amazing. So I have not gotten super, like maybe in the last 6 or 8 months, I've started really getting into podcast more and like the audio side of thing. You and I have talked about it. Like I've become an avid walker, and
Hmm.
when you're spending a couple hours a day walking, you find like time to listen to things more. And
Hmm. Like Tori Amos.
yeah, like Tori Amos, absolutely. And so I'm kind of starting to get into podcast. Also, I'm really appreciative for all of the transcription services because I speed read, and so I can like transcribe a podcast and read it in a few minutes, and pick up some nuts and bolts, and then decide if I'm going to listen to all of it. Anyway, I
That
am.
is such a Thomas thing to say. Transcript, speed read.
Yes, yeah. Well, time efficiency and like
Time efficiency.
there's so many people with so many important things to say, and like how do you decide not just who you're going to give like surface attention to, but like who you really want to like go deep with and
Mhm.
like listen more. And so I do find myself using transcripts to like decide like what I want to go deeper into. I don't know
Mm,
that I get like a ton of depth from my initial speed reading, but it is a nice like screening tool.
hmm. Right. Great tips from Thomas. Well, before we veer too far off course, you've been at this for a while, the whole herbalism thing. I would love to hear about how you got started, when you got started, and just kind of
Mhm.
steps along the way that's brought you to us today.
Yeah. I think that there are like a couple of major pathways into herbal medicine. There's the people that come to herbal medicine via plants, and then there's the people that come to herbal medicine because of sickness. And I came like from that second path, and it wasn't me. It was my twin sister got really sick when we were 13, and um, I was good at sciencey stuff and interested in science and medicine, and so had like tried to help my mom navigate to specialist for the first time. And so I'm like, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, South Alabama, population like 50 people, 30 minutes from the nearest grocery store. um, and so it was like the first major medical thing that she had navigated, and I tried to help her out with that, and um, did a pretty good job like going to doctor's appointments and being able to like say here's like why we're here and what we've had done and where we're at in this process. And long story short, there was a very frustrating 6 months of my sister going to multiple doctors, and eventually a specialist at university hospitals in Alabama, and then down to like Florida, Shands Hospital. And to make a long, complex, fairly boring story short, uh, doctors could not figure out what was wrong with my sister, and a like herbalist, former hairdresser, like not advanced degree, just like a solid community herbalist, um, said, "Well, hey, have you thought about this thing? Have you tried this?" And we did, and like 6 days later, my sister was better. And it was like very basic things that like somebody should have inquired about and didn't, and it really flipped my world upside down.
Mhm.
And it was a paradigm shift for me, and um, I went from being like interested in science and medicine to thinking like, oh, well, I want to know more about herbal medicine, and like herbal medicine and medicine come from the same place. So I want to know more about the history of that and like everything that's led up to. And so I started. So the herbalist that helped my sister, um, I said, like, can I study with you? And she said, well, I don't like teach classes, but you can sit with me in consults. And within a year, my mom had opened a little herb store in Florella, Alabama. And I would like ride the school bus there in the afternoons and open the shop because she still had a job or two um, at the same time. And I don't know, for the next like 5 years or so, until I graduated high school and had started junior college. I worked my mom's herb shop after school and on the weekends, and a couple of weekends a month. My teacher would come in and do a day or two of consults, and I would sit with her. And after like 5 years of doing this, I had started like giving my friends herbs in college and helping with the normal like cold, flu, college hangover type issues. And at some point, my teacher, I like called to see when the next day of consults was, and she kind of randomly just said, "So I've been meaning to tell you, but you're an herbalist now, and you should probably just start seeing people yourself."
Hmm.
And so, um, yeah, like I did not care for my college experience very much, and um, I thought after my brief stint in college that I was going to go into the military, and started that process and got to the very last step, actually like swore into the military trying to get an exemption because it turns out I'm colorblind. And so I wanted to do like code breaking in foreign languages, um, and they want you to be able to see colors to do that for some reason. And so I didn't go. And my girlfriend, who was probably only dating me to get out of small town Alabama, broke up with me right after I got rejected from the army, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I had been doing like herbalism as a fun hobby type thing, and driving around my hometown, and I saw this little storefront that had a for rent sign, and I thought like my mom had closed her herb shop down 30 minutes away, and I knew a lot of people from that, and I thought maybe that's what I try. Maybe the herbal thing is more than a hobby. And also, I was like a broke 19-year-old and didn't know how to do any of that. And so I just called the number on the door, and it turns out the guy like knew my grandfather and found out that I was 19 and interested in starting my first business. And so he gave me 6 months of free rent and half price for a year after that. And then this other herbalist who lived an hour away down in Crestview decided at like 85 years old that she was finally going to retire, and I had helped her out. And so she gave me like boxes of inventory, and I went from like a harebrained idea to having a community herb shop in a week and a half.
Wow.
And yeah, the universe conspired to make me an herbalist,
Hmm.
and I've been pretty grateful for that conspiracy working out.
Hmm. It's cool to hear that story. Piece of it I've known, and maybe other pieces I'd forgotten. But I remember years ago at a conference, I can't remember where, but you said something, and I can't remember the total context, but you said something like, "Oh, I could have been a medical doctor, but I chose to be an herbalist because what we do is so wonderful." It wasn't that it was like a herbalism wasn't a compensation prize of like, "Oh, I couldn't hack it as a doctor." Like you chose to be an herbalist.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about medicine and was moderately serious about medicine when I found herbalism, and then I started practicing herbalism and still was considering medicine, and finally decided that like there's a lot of stuff that herbal medicine can't do, but man, the stuff that it can do is just freaking magical.
Mm,
And there's like there's a need, there's a place for that, and it doesn't have to exist um, in contradiction to modern medicine. It can work alongside it. And so I since then, um, I have had medical doctors like come through my herbal program, and I have a lot of friends in medicine, and I'm looking at the current state of medicine, kind of like really glad that I didn't go that route. Yeah, I guess all branches have their challenges, herbal medicine included. But I think herbal medicine is a much needed type of medicine that mainstream medicine just doesn't come close to like filling the need that herbal medicine does.
Yeah. One thing I find so fascinating about you, Thomas, as a human, is that you had so much clinical experience so early on, like as a teenager, you're getting
Yeah.
clinical experience. And one of the stories I like is how you traveled around for a while too. Like you went to like different places. And will you talk a little bit about that? Because you were pretty young when you were doing that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so I ran Andalusia Natural Health for a little less than 2 years, so 2001-ish to 2003-ish, and I gave away and went in about like $25,000 worth of debt doing that process, because it turns out that like when I know people need something and they don't have the money for it, I just give it to them, which is not what you should do if you're trying to run a retail business. But it works out fine if you're running like a community practice. I realized I'd been doing like weekly educational classes on the basics, and I was doing like 30 to 45 minute consults out of the like back office, and I had some bulk foods and herbs and tinctures and the normal like small town herb shop stuff. And I decided that I really disliked all of the front of the shop stuff, and I really liked the consultations. So I closed down my shop. I passed out my business cards to everybody that had been coming to classes and said, like, hey, I'm still here as an herbalist. I'm seeing people like out of the front room of my house, or I can meet you like at a coffee shop. But I don't want to run um, this business anymore. And I didn't make enough money as like shifting like from retail clinical split into straight clinical. I didn't make enough money off of consultations in my hometown. And I also, because I had had a little herb shop. I knew a lot of other herb shop owners, and so I started calling folks and saying like, "Hey, decided that herb shopping's not for me. Clinicianing is for me. Any chance you would want me to come in and see your folks? And like, I'll recommend what I recommend, but if you stock what I recommend, you can make the sell." And so, yeah, I started doing that first in rural Alabama, and then in Mississippi, and then in South Alabama, and then in Georgia. And um, I had like a 3 week circuit where I would be on the road for a little less than 3 weeks, and then home for a little bit more than a week. And I did that from 2003-ish, 4-ish until 2007, when
Wow.
I opened a like a multi-practitioner wellness center down in Pace, Florida. So yeah, 3 or 4 years of being on the road herbalism. During that time, I also went to like massage therapy. I messed my back up really bad, and manual therapy was the only thing that was helping it. And so I went to massage therapy school during that time, and they were very like flexible as long as I got my hours. So I would like go on the road for a couple of weeks, and then I would take both morning and evening classes for a couple of weeks to make up the hours. And so I squeezed that into everything. And that was, like I think learning how to do manual therapy is probably good for a lot of herbalists, even if they don't do it as part of their practice or professionally, like understanding how to physically work with the body, I think is great. So yeah, traveling herbalism was a thing. This is in the early 2000s, in the middle of nowhere, deep south. I don't know how that would do now, but I spent a lot of time in like little mom and pop hotel rooms and like kitchens and broom closets of herb stores, seeing anybody that would, take my advice.
Wow. Yeah, I just like the go get 'em attitude on that, like you went from being like, "Oh, is herbalism a hobby?" to like, I mean, you have to really want it. I mean, 3 weeks on the road at a time continuously, that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. It was fun,
Hmm.
like I got to spend time in different towns, like I'd be done by 5:30 or 6 o'clock. I'd grab dinner, maybe a movie. Like it was not all work, and the people are great, like a lot of times the owners of the herb shops would host me at their place, or they'd have some event, and I I look back on that time period fondly. I It was, yeah, it was, so it was maybe difficult, but my God, so much better than like working for somebody else.
Yeah.
Like I
Amen
wasn't
to that.
qualified to do anything else, so
Yeah.
I could have been flipping burgers, or like being a traveling herbalist. It's pretty cool. I
Yeah.
got to do house calls.
Mm.
Like I'd meet people, and they would say like, "Do you give a family discount?" And I would say like, "What size of family?" And they would say, "Me, my wife, and 18 of our immediate relatives." And I'd say,
Mm.
"I need a couple of days. Can you, do you have a spare room?" And feed me
Well,
breakfast and spend all day doing, family members' appointments. And
mm,
yeah, I guess looking back, it was quite a lot of hustling, but I didn't think of it that way because, you're in your early 20s, and
mm,
getting involved at such a young age with such like little life overhead let me
mm,
do all types of things that I found to be kind of fun.
hmm. I have that same experience of just that those younger years and very little overhead, so I can appreciate that. My first like 9 years as an herbalist, I didn't have running water, so rent was very cheap, and it really
Yeah.
allowed me to do a lot of things that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. So I can appreciate that. Well, I'm really excited to talk about the herb you chose, blue vervain. I have kind of like, I don't want to say love-hate relationship, but it's like it's kind of a shaky relationship. I'm excited to hear more about blue vervain from you. It's kind of interesting to me that you chose this herb actually. So,
It's my yeah. I have a complex relationship with blue vervain also.
mm.
Um, I bet for some of the same reasons that you do, and maybe we just like talk about those, right? Like blue vervain is a relaxant, and everybody that takes blue vervain at a high enough dose will feel some level of relaxation. It might be mild, right? Like some people they take blue vervain and they think like, meh, chamomile in strength. I think those people should take more blue vervain, but um, as a relaxant, I think it's a fairly potent one. I mean, in my head, it's stronger than a cup of chamomile tea, or a cup of linden, or a cup of passion flower. So it's the stronger in effect an herb is, the more I might think of it as shifting away from like gentle towards like nudgy or pushy. And I think, unlike a lot of other nervous system herbs that are gentle in effect, for some people, blue vervain can come across pushy. And And I think that those are maybe the people that need blue vervain the most, which would potentially be us. So blue vervain types, what are we talking about when we talk types? And so do you mind if I get like lectury for a second, just about like
Lecture away, Thomas. I'm here for it.
okay, so like when I think about how herbs work, I think about herbs that affect our qualitative state of being, herbs that make us feel warmer or cooler or moister or drier or tighter or relaxeder. And then I think about, so the qualities is how I term those. And then I think about the ways in which herbs might affect our tissue function, coolagogue or galactagogue. And you might not be able to anticipate what the herbal actions are from the qualities that they impart. And then we have herbal effects, which are the endpoints: disease modifying, disease process modifying, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial. And we typically select herbs based on their either general qualities or their desired actions or their desired effects, or some combination of those things. Then we add on the nuance of what the eclectic physicians would call the specific indications. And these are more than their broad qualities. Sometimes they describe their actions or effects, but especially when we talk about the specific indications for nervous system herbs, we're talking about a super specific qualitative pattern instead of quality itself that it shifts. So like there's lots of things that will cool you down, and there are lots of things that will warm you up, and there are lots of things that will moisten you, but there is only one herb that works specifically above and beyond a general relaxant for stiff-necked, overachieving list makers who have a hard time asking for help. And that's blue vervain, right? And there are other specific indications. And so, if we try to translate specific indications into modern medicine, we might say that in modern medicine, there are a lot of symptoms that we call depression. And there is a general class of medication called antidepressant that we use for that. But there are a lot of different antidepressants. And how do we narrow down the one for the person? And then we start looking for more subtle things, like is this person's appetite high or low? Is this person like super gloomy depressed or anxious depressed? They use specifiers. And that might be the closest concept to specific indications that we have in modern medicine is like the symptom specifiers that would lead you to choosing one particular type of antidepressant over another, or one particular type of anxiolytic over another. And even those don't come close to the specificity of specific indications in eclectic medicine. So I think of them as these super specific qualitative patterns. And when I think of qualitative patterns and how we select herbs, what I normally think of are more acquired patterns. Sometimes you give herbs for a constitutional remedy. Like some people remember being hot and dry since childhood, and they just never heard of marshmallow until they were 40 years old. But most people didn't feel constantly hot and dried when they were a child. Whether it came on as part of a broader imbalance in their 40s or 50 or whatever, whatever time period it came on. And so I think that in some instances, specific indications point towards remedies that work best, not just for things that come on as part of illness or that come on as part of a disease or a change later in life. I think that sometimes specific indications point towards remedies that address deeper, long-standing, constitutional type of imbalances. And blue vervain for everyone is a relaxant, but for a special type of person, that person being type A is a good way to talk about them, like hard driven. I think the blue vervainer is probably hard driven at baseline, and that's their positive manifestation of that constitutional trait. But then when out of balance, they veer towards fanaticism. And I certainly would have characterized my early herbal career as tipping more towards herbal fanaticism, and starting at such a young age with folk training. Nobody told me what herbs couldn't do, and so I tried a whole lot of things that I would not recommend students trying now. And I think that it was partially that imbalanced blue vervain type of constitution that drove that. And maybe that's a fun conversation for another day. But blue vervain does something for those of us who have overachieving type A hard driving personalities at baseline. And a lot of times folks that have that overachieving hard driving personality tend to have a lot of inner perfectionism. And that inner perfectionism and hard drivenness will often result in heightened levels of activation that are very difficult to tease out sometimes, whether they are positive eustressors or negative distressors. That heightened level of activation combined with perfectionism and the hard driving nature often creates a lot of physical tension in the body. And so people that benefit from blue vervain, beyond its relaxant qualities, which I want to reiterate, everybody should take some blue vervain just because it's a fun chill remedy. But if you are also a blue vervainer, welcome. Rosalee and I think I speak for Rosalee.
Can we get t-shirts? I think we need t-shirts that say blue vervainer on it. That's like my new goal. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so holding tension in the neck and shoulders and often face and jaw is common. We often grit our teeth or we have facial tension and neck and shoulder tension and that hard driving nature. Along with that inner perfectionism tends to make us do a lot of this to get all of the thoughts out and work really hard at our desk, and that probably doesn't help the neck and shoulder issue. And so while blue vervain is a relaxant that everybody should take, if you identify as being hard driven, with some strong perfectionist tendencies and maybe some cognitive rigidity, but also you're probably a high achiever, and you might see that burnout line and just say, I can handle this a little bit longer. That maybe that's your pattern. I would encourage you that the first time you take blue vervain, sit down first. The first time I took blue vervain, I went weak in the knees, and I have seen multiple people go weak in the knees at blue vervain, and it's always the blue vervain or personality types that do. And my experience was it was like the first time in my life that my brain completely shut up. I was a teenager when I took blue vervain for the first time, and I took it once, and like not having thoughts in my mind was so unsettling that it was probably a year or more before I tried it again.
Mhm.
So yeah, blue vervain. So I keep a bottle on my desk. It is a good friend. Hey, nice. Um,
Cheers.
and yeah, I think that it does something special in brains that identify with that blue vervain personality type.
Part of my complication with blue vervain is that what I want to take is rhodiola and cordyceps all the time. That's like what I want to take. But then maybe what I should be taking is blue vervain. And speaking of it being on our desks, my husband Xavier knew I was about to chat with you, and he asked what herb, and I said blue vervain. He said, "Oh, you know what? I noticed the other day that you have blue vervain on your desk." He goes, "Maybe you should talk to Thomas about like dosage. Maybe you aren't taking the right dosage." He says, "You always talk about dosage," says Xavier. "Maybe you need to talk to him." He goes, "Something might not be working." I was like, "Thank you for the input, handsome French
So
husband."
I have to ask, like it's on my desk and it's one of my dear friends, and also like I don't take it daily. It is a great remedy for me at the end of the day.
Mm,
But I'll often, like by the end of the day, I have my like end of the day rituals that help me unwind.
mm,
Like if they don't, then I might take blue vervain. But if I take blue vervain in the workday, I'm either going to get relaxed and hyper focus and get like 2 weeks worth of work done in a few hours, or
love
I'm
those
going
days.
to have a daydream and not get anything done for the next few hours. And like I feel like that is the where the rub in the relationship is at for me.
Hmm,
And,
fair.
and I also feel like that might be the purpose of the relationship. Like maybe the fact that we have to debate with ourselves, is it worth feeling relaxed and risking a daydream is the reason why we should take it regardless.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I have some thoughts about the lessons of blue vervain that I'm not
For
finished
blue
with.
vervainers. I'm really into that term.
So, yeah. Um, dosage. I think that the first time you take blue vervain, 10 drops is a reasonable starting place. That can be so bitter it can nauseate some folks.
Mhm,
And so if you're prone to nauseous from bitterness, have a warm cup of an aromatic tea to go with it. If you're not, then don't worry about it.
I've only worked with it as a tincture, but I've heard from my students who've tried it as a tea that that is kinda more activating as a tea, the nausea. It seems like that doesn't go down
Yes.
as well.
Yeah. Well, I think it's dose dependent, and I think we're just more likely to get more plant substance in with the tea than we are with the tincture.
Mm,
Um, so, yeah, I find like therapeutic doses somewhere between 5 drops and, 25, 35, 40 drops. Like, if you take 40 drops of blue vervain, if you take a couple milliliters of blue vervain and you don't feel anything, it's not your herb. And also, if you take a couple of milliliters of blue vervain and you don't feel anything and it's not your herb, try some milky oats.
mm,
Uh, like I sometimes I think we need to do nervine tonics to like more gently restore the nervous system's ability to feel relaxed. before we try overt relaxants like blue vervain. In the tea form, I don't know that the tea offers any advantages to the tincture, and it certainly doesn't taste good, and it can totally make you nauseous. I had my teaching spot in my full-time program was in the afternoons, right after a materia medica lecture. And so I was like walking over for a lecture in therapeutics of some sort. And all of the students were out like on the breezeway in front of the classroom. And I could hear them like giddily laughing from a distance. And I got closer and they were just like in hysterics, just like having a wild laugh. And I got closer and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And a student turned to me and said, "Well, we all drank too much blue vervain and we're vomiting." And I said, "Huh?" Because they're all like laughing. And she says, "Yeah, we're all just so." And then she turns and like projectile vomits off the breezeway. Like
Okay.
hardcore spews, and turns back and starts laughing and says, "We're all just vomiting and we also can't stop laughing about it." And so, yes, too much blue vervain infusion can certainly be vomit inducing, and also surprisingly, at least in this one group that I saw consume too much blue vervain, like not in a way that you're going to be upset and mad at blue vervain afterwards, which is that, like, you get nauseous and vomit off of lobelia, you're going to be upset and pissed at lobelia for a while. Apparently not with blue vervain.
I do not feel
Uh,
like testing this, but I really like the story. And I'm going to report back to Xavier, my husband, that apparently I have to take the blue vervain. I can't just look at it on my desk. That's the thing I'm learning right
yeah,
now.
yeah, I think that's probably an important part of it, is you have to take it to. Um, oh, I wanted to say, uh, since we're down the rabbit trail about blue vervain, I do have a few clinical tidbits that have nothing to do with its personality and relaxant effect. Number one, it is also a diaphoretic. So it induces sweating, but the dosage at which it induces sweating and the dosage at which it induces nausea is pretty close.
Mm.
Um, I have used blue vervain on 3 occasions now, and a student has used it once in people that could not sweat, and because they couldn't sweat, had like in one case had multiple heat strokes. In another, it was like a college or maybe a high school athlete that was being recruited by a college, but they got sick and then stopped sweating and then started passing out on the football field, and they were like going to lose their scholarship. Anyway, I've seen large doses of blue vervain infusion, right to the point of inducing vomiting, also cause people to sweat. In one person, they said they had not worn antiperspirant or deodorant in 30 years because they just never, after having like a heat stroke 30 years ago, had never sweated again.
Wow.
And blue vervain, one big nauseating infusion, um, started their sweating back, and they had like a really profuse sweat and then kind of normalized sweating after that. So I've got a few cases on that, and I think its diaphoretic action is very interesting. And you don't run into cases that often where you can't induce a sweat with cayenne or ginger or elderflower, or a combination of those. But if you do, blue vervain infusion is worth trying. And then I have a couple of cases of pulmonary hypertension, which is a pretty severe, like life-threatening type thing. I have a couple of cases of pulmonary hypertension that completely spontaneously resolved the week after the people started taking blue vervain. 2 cases there, and
Wow.
so no clues why. Doesn't affect lung function that we know of, but I think that anecdotes are strong enough and well documented enough that I like putting them out there with conversations about blue vervain because it's a safe herb and it's a cheap herb. And if it can do more than just its magic in relaxing and having specific indications and a whole like cult of fun personalities that support it, like if it can do even more than that, I'd love other people to potentially like test that out.
Thank you for that, Thomas. I really always love your clinical pearls and sharing that. And those are two things I had not previously heard before. So thank you for that. I also just have to say it's such a pretty plant. I love growing it. And sometimes I feel like that's part of the medicine really for me is that I'll go out to the garden and spend time in the garden
Mhm.
with blue vervain. It can just capture me for such a long time. The bees always love it. And
I
yeah,
Yeah,
it's so beautiful.
it's a gorgeous plant. I'm like currently in the early stages of potentially redoing my school logo, and blue vervain is the plant for the new
Oh,
logo.
fun.
If I wind up doing a new logo, it's going to be a blue vervain
Oh,
intertwined.
fun. Well, and you've shared a recipe with us, which is a recipe that I get the sense that you personally use to get to sleep. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear a little bit about this formula and the recipe in general.
Yes, it is my go to sleep formula, and it is it's passion flower, blue vervain, hops, and raw wolfia. And I want to throw some immediate caveats out there. Number one, I make my passion flower differently than other folks, and number two, you probably don't need raw wolfia in this. Um, I have struggled with insomnia since I was a teenager, and I can normally get ahead of it. And I have other formulas that I use if I feel a bout of insomnia coming on. I'm also a relatively recent convert to like 99% blue blocking glasses and early bright light therapy in the morning. And that's been the best thing for my insomnia that I've probably ever done. But in the past, when I have had insomnia that didn't respond to more gentle remedies, this is the formula that I used. So passion flower. The last few years, I've been playing around with, at the start of the season, doing a fresh 1 to 2 tincture. And then a month later, pressing that out and using the fresh 1 to 2 tincture to tincture a freshly dried 1 to 5 batch of leaves and flowers. And so you get a little bit stronger than a 1 to 5, but you get the fresh components and the freshly dried components together. And so it's a pretty potent passion flower formula. Um, and I do equal parts of that and blue vervain, which you don't need to do as any type of concentrated special preparation. Like a 1 to 5 of blue vervain is more than potent enough for it to work, which is kind of cool. And then 1 part of hops. And my secret for hops is to go to brew stores that do beer brewing and ask to smell their hops. Hops have wildly different aroma profiles, variety to variety. And I dislike all varieties of American hops that I've ever tried. And I like all but one variety of European hops that I've tried. And it wasn't until doing a smell test followed by a taste test that I realized like hops is something that in an ideal world is kind of like individualized. And maybe we need more variety and specificity in our hops tincture in in the marketplace. Because I would
That's interesting.
certainly, yeah, I would certainly like buy craft formulated hops blends or specific species of hops. Anyway, hops I think is a pretty reliable sedative a lot of folks, I just like a nice European hops. And then Rauwolfia serpentina, Indian snake root, is a very popular sedative in Ayurveda, used for insomnia, used for insanity, kind of an anti-manic remedy. The Ayurvedic text translate a lot of the indications from the old works into schizophrenia now. It is a presynaptic inhibitor of your monoamines. So it helps suppress the release of epinephrine, norepinephrine, and theoretically serotonin and dopamine are also suppressed. There is a theoretical contraindication for using Rauwolfia in depression. It's popularly thought that it induced depression because of the alkaloid respirine in there. But there was a good journal article that came out maybe a decade ago called the Myth of Respirine-Induced Depression, and basically said that the studies that showed that it caused depression really didn't show that and were of poor quality, and it has this long tradition of being used in folks that were both anxious and depressed, and as long as there's that anxious or insomniac quality there, it's probably okay even in depression. It is a low-dose botanical. It's one of those that like more is not better. Little bit is all that you need. And once again, this is like a when you've tried everything else formula, not the first formula that you start with.
So Rauwolfia can be omitted at least in the beginning.
Yeah,
Easily.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Most people don't need Rauwolfia. Stubborn, like long-term constitutional insomnia, Rauwolfia can be a nice one to add in.
Great. So listeners can download the recipe for the GTFTS sleep blend at herbswithrosalee.podcast.com or check out the show notes. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Mm-hmm.
Before we move on, do you have anything else you'd like to share about blue vervain?
I think that the blue vervains are all fairly interchangeable. So like a European vervain, the Verbena hustata, which is the most commonly used one, and then Verbena brasiliensis, which is what I grew up using. Ditch vervain is what we called it because it's just all over the ditches in the deep south. And yeah, I think that they're all fairly interchangeable, all with the same basic specific indications and general relaxant properties, but you might play with your dose. You might use Verbena hustata to like set your dose response expectations, and then play with your other varieties. I think that with the European, I normally use a little bit more. With the Braziliensis, I normally use a little bit less.
Okay, thanks for that.
Hmm.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that on blue vervain. I'm definitely going to look at it more and probably keep taking rhodiola, and then I'm going to get into burnout, and then I'm going to think about it some more. That's kind of my relationship with blue vervain. So,
oh my God, spoken like such a vervainer.
I'm also going to look into shirts because that's awesome. Well, so we've talked about young Thomas and your early clinical experience and herb shop, and then you started your own school. And the last time I talked to you, there was a lot of excitement about turning your foundational program into a book,
Wow.
and I would love to hear more about that and just kind of when we talked about it last time, it kind of just blew my mind the amount of work that was going into this and just the breadth of it. So I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I started my herb school in 2010, and have the curriculum has kind of like been a continuously updated thing since then, but I did a major revision in 2015, and I did like a half revision in 2019, 2020. In 2021, I decided that I didn't want to do another full-time program. So I'd been running like a year-long 25, 30 hour a week intensive. And I decided that I didn't want to do that. Instead, I wanted to rewrite the curriculum, not update it to like I did in 2015 and 2019, 2020, but a ground up rewrite. I wanted to take our like thousands of hours of, or I think right at 10,000 hours of class recordings because we live streamed our full-time program. And one year I had a student who like in class literally transcribed the entire program. And so I had lots and lots of evolutions of classes that they would change and evolve when I teach them live, but they had not gotten written down. They were just whiteboard and recorded. And I had changed my approach and how I taught things, and I wanted to do a different type of curriculum. I wanted to do a more layered curriculum instead of module by module, which is what I had been doing. I wanted to do more scaffolding and better pedagogy, and I hired a instructional designer to learn about that whole process, um, and learned about like the learning journey itself and what's involved. And so and then I had taken time to not teach and to just like to think, to read other great thinkers and to think myself about like the future of herbal medicine and like my experience with herb students from different backgrounds and like where they started and where they landed at the end of the program and what like all of this meant. And yeah, so I would say that maybe like other herb schools, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't speak for other herb schools, but my first herb program I wrote for me. Like I wrote what I wanted to teach about and what I found interesting, and I then built backwards from there what the students needed to understand what I found interesting, and and I think that was successful because what I found interesting was a lot of clinical nuts and bolts that other people didn't talk about a lot. And I also, when I decided I didn't want to do another full-time program, and I wanted to take some time and think through philosophy and the learning process and scaffolding learning experiences, and like I spent a lot of time analyzing our curriculum, thinking about our outcomes, and then kind of starting from the ground up. And I'm really happy with how that process is turning out. It's not done, but last year I published my 5 realms, which is a practical philosophy of herbal medicine, and I laid out what I think is a pretty reasonable, like modern philosophical understanding of holism and how that works from a plant-centered perspective. And that was the first piece of the new curriculum. And since then, more and more has come out, and I have gotten very wordy um, and yeah, so I am almost done with our foundational curriculum update. And for the first time, I wrote it with the intention of eventually also writing a book. So I have some beliefs about modern herbal education, right? Like I think that a lot of what we see out there is very entertaining and also very surface level. And to really engage deeper requires reading. I don't know if we have talked about this, but the declining rates of truly functional literacy in our country are like getting scary. And more folks are having a hard time sustaining enough focus to read and to engage really deeply with stuff. And I think that reading and like underlining and making notes and like the actual study um, is something that we need more of in herbal medicine. And so I in writing this curriculum, we have like audio overviews and video components, but it's very reading heavy because I think people need to read more and to practice more reading to be able to sustain the type of critical analysis that you need to be a good practitioner, a good herbalist. So anyway, all of this came together starting this past year is when I started taking all the pieces that I'd spent a few years previous accumulating and started putting them together. And the foundational program is almost done, and big piece of community we've already been working on, and we're turning that foundational program into a textbook also. And I'm very excited about it. It's going, like publishing thing, it takes forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that our manuscript will be delivered this fall, but it will probably be like spring of 27 before it actually comes out. Maybe winter 27 if I'm lucky. So it's still going to be a while, but it starts with philosophy. Like we all have ways that we think about health and disease and how the world works that we normally don't think about consciously. We think about these things unconsciously. They're just part of our world perspective. And yet it's these unconscious beliefs that influence what we study in herbal medicine, how much time we spend devoted to the individual subjects, how we put it all together, how we show up in clinic for folks. And so I wanted to start my foundational program and this foundational textbook with just an exploration of philosophy in general, and then how I think about the philosophy of herbal medicine and how all of the pieces and parts fit together. And then it goes into what I think herbalists do exceptionally well, which is building health, and covers everything from like clinical nutrition to movement and exercise to like a connection, sense of coherence, like all of the pieces that I think are foundational to health. And then, materia medica and how do you study that? And I teach that materia medica is like there's a lot of different ways to learn materia medica and to come at it, but the most valuable place to start from is in our own body, like an embodied perspective. And so when we take herbs into our body, like what are they doing? Why are we feeling the things that we're feeling when we take herbal medicine? And how does that, because I'm a science nerd, how does that physiologically work in the body? Like what receptors are activated that make us feel the warmth from ginger? And what does that activation mean? And where does it work? And what does it do? And what might that imply about how we conceptualize ginger? So anyway, it goes into like all of the foundations that I can think of that you need to apply herbal medicine holistically.
Sounds like this is going to be at least a couple hundred pages then. Probably paperback, size 14 font, 200 pages.
I mean, I was hoping for 50 pages and yeah, I don't actually, I'm still working on the last section, so I don't know what it's going to clock in at, but I have a general estimate from my publisher that if we choose the standard number of pictures for the word count that I've given them, it'll clock in at like 850 pages, maybe. But
You'll probably
there's
need to
so
call on
many.
your good friends to be early readers is also
Yes.
something, and I think I
Yeah.
established already that we're good friends. So
I'll text you chapters at a time.
it'd be great. My WhatsApp will ding ding ding. Thomas
Yeah,
again.
so that's what I've been working on is this foundational curriculum textbook. I'm also at the same time in parallel, which I question my decision making about, finishing a course on depression, which has been part of my healing journey through depression has been to journal about what I've experienced and research and make notes and write and try to understand myself and my experience. And so this course I've been taking all of that from the last few years and like trying to get it all out on paper and organized into a way that makes sense. And that has been really fun. And our next module, I get to talk about psychedelics and my experience with them. And that's been really fun. That's also like probably a big chunk of the community course and eventual series of books is like mental health. Like community herbalists deal with a lot of mental health stuff. So yeah, text writing. I've been very happy writing, Rosalee. I've written hundreds of pages this past year and a half that I'm quite excited. And by writing, I have not typed all of the words. Talking, dictation has changed my life. I get to walk around and lecture into my phone recorder, and it's a great way for me to get my thoughts out before I actually sit down at a computer and start typing.
Well, that's a gift to all of us. I'm really excited to see all of this come to fruition, and yeah, it's going to be a great contribution to the herbal world. So that's going to be absolutely wonderful.
Thanks. I think
Yeah.
I think that it will be, like when you study TCM, you have a core set of canon, like of material that you have to study. But with Western herbalism, like there's so many great pieces that you have to kind of like cobble together things. And so what I'm hoping is that I can create some like large bodies of foundational knowledge that will let you learn from this like diverse, amazing group of Western herbalists, with like a shared language and understanding of the different places and perspectives that folks are coming from. So
Mhm.
I think that it's going to turn out to be pretty good.
Yeah, I have no doubt. Well, Thomas, before you go, I have one last question for you, and I'm excited to hear your response to this question because I think you have opinions on it. And
Okay.
that question is, what do you wish you had known when you first started working with herbs?
Man, that's hard. Uh, I wish that I knew more herbalist when I first started working with herbs. I knew my teacher, and she introduced me to my second teacher, who eventually introduced me to my third teacher. But that was like a 7-year process, and I didn't really know other practicing herbalists at the time, and knowing other practicing herbalists early on would have probably been really cool and helpful and fun. And also, because I started at a different place than some, like I started pure like Western folk herbalism in that like Utah Mormon herbal revival, Dr. John Christopher Bernard Jensen style. Um, because I started there, I did not incorporate the like modern basic medical sciences modern clinical nutrition for the first 7 years of my practice. And pros and cons, I can like look at some scenarios that I certainly would have done differently had I known what I know now, and also they worked out or not, and I learned valuable lessons that I don't think I would have otherwise learned. But yeah, if I had to do over again, I would probably do coursework in physiology, pathophysiology. I feel like that would have given me, and nutrition. I feel like that would have given me a head start. Like I graduate students now that like when they graduate are where I was after 15 years of practice, and a big reason for that is I embraced the modern like basic medical sciences, which I think provide a really good scaffolding for Western herbalism. Like in TCM, the evolution, arguably, like most of the pieces were in place 600 years ago, and it hasn't changed a ton. Interpretations, little things, but like in Western herbalism, the evolution continued through the discovery of randomized controlled trials and bacteria and viruses, and all the way. And so the Western herbal framework has more roots in early physiology than other systems, and I didn't realize that at the time, and I feel like it would have given me a jump start had I realized that. So I encourage folks to pick up anatomy is still to me a little boring because I'm not going to be dissecting anybody or doing surgery. And yes, you need to know where things are, but like understanding the function, the physiology, and the pathophysiology, like the biological basis for disease, I think has made me a much more precise herbalist. And I feel like I use a lot less of our plant friends now than I did early in my career. And that's also important to me is you can be a conservative herbalist. It's probably a better phrase for that. You can recommend conservatively and still get great results. Like if you think you need 5 formulas, you can probably get it done with 2. If you think you need 10 supplements, 1 or 3. Like there's so much more that the body can do than I think we might inherently give it credit for when we're trying to throw all of this support at it. And so learning physiology and pathophysiology, I think, has let me be more targeted in the type of support that I recommend.
Well, that's a wonderful reflection from somebody who's been in clinical practice for so long. Well, thank you so much for being here, Thomas. Thanks for your wisdom on blue vervain. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for sharing, and really looking forward to seeing your projects come out into the world. So maybe you'll come back sometime when we have these projects out there.
Yeah, I was going to say, as opposed to a few years ago when I said no to everything, I now am in a say yes to everything mode. And so I would love to come back, and thank you for having me.
Oh, always a pleasure.
Okay.
Thanks for being here. Don't forget to head over to the show notes at herbswithrosaleepodcast.com to download your beautifully illustrated recipe card. There you'll also be able to sign up for my weekly newsletter, which is the best way to stay in touch with me. You can find more about Thomas on his school website, eclecticschoolofherbalmedicine.com. And if you'd like more herbal episodes to come your way, then one of the best ways to support this podcast is by subscribing on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. I deeply believe that this world needs more herbalists and plant-centered folks, and I'm so glad that you're here as part of this herbal community. Also, a big round of thanks to the people all over the world who make this podcast happen week to week. Emily Thomas Anderson is the project manager who oversees the entire podcast operation, from guest outreach to writing show notes and on and on. I often tell people, I just show up. Emily does most of the heavy lifting. Nicole Paul is the operator for the entire Herbs with Rosalee school and community. She keeps an eagle eye view on everything to ensure it's running smoothly. Francesca is our fabulous video and audio editor. She not only makes listening more pleasant, she also adds beauty to the YouTube videos with plant images and video overlays. Tatiana Rusakova is the botanical illustrator who creates gorgeous plant and recipe illustrations for us. I love them, and I know you love them. Once the illustration is ready, Jenny creates the recipe cards as well as the thumbnail images for YouTube. Alex is our behind-the-scenes tech support and social media manager, and Karen and Emily are our student services coordinators and community support. If you've written in with a question, undoubtedly you got help from them. For those of you who like to read along, Jennifer is who creates the transcripts each week. Xavier, my handsome French husband, is the cameraman and website IT guy. It takes an herbal village to make it all happen, including you. Thank you so much for your support through your comments, reviews, and ratings. One of my favorite things about this podcast is hearing from you. I read every comment that comes in, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts. All right, you've lasted to the very end of the show, which means you get your own gold star and this herbal tidbit. Well, Thomas mentioned some specific indications for blue vervain, so I thought it'd be interesting to include some of other specific indications from other herbalists here in our herbal tidbit section. Eclectic physician John Scudder in 1870 wrote, "It exerts a marked influence upon the nervous system, quieting irritation and strengthening functional activity. It relieves pain, especially when dependent upon nervous irritation." Herbalist Matthew Wood, "This is the remedy for the person who has high ideals, overworks in the service of these ideals, and eventually becomes ill from the strain and tension." Jim McDonald says, paraphrasing, "For when you have exceptionally high, perhaps even unrealistic expectations for yourself that then bleed on to others." And then Felter and Lloyd in 1909, "A quieting and relaxing remedy influencing the nervous system and promoting perspiration, useful in colds, coughs, and fevers with restlessness." Thanks for joining me on this herbal adventure. See you next time. Hi, it's Rosalee. If this podcast has brought you inspiration or grounded you in your love of herbs, I'd love to invite you to join the podcast circle. Your membership helps support the show, and it gives you access to live herbal classes, exclusive resources, and a warm community of fellow plant lovers. Learn more and join us at herbalpodcastcircle.com. Your support truly helps this podcast thrive. Thank you.